did you learn to drive? Preschool? Drive like my grandma. Use your blinker, you dummy.
Okay, did you get to watch the game last night?
Nope, I was busy filing my taxes. Stocks, am I right? Just a minute. Come on, I don't have so much time. On Amazon, and there's this thing for $10. Let me tell you about this incredible package deal. Is your name Grace? Because you are amazing.
It's Mariah Ann. This is embarrassing. Sorry.
Adulting, am I right?
Yeah, adulting.
You are hilarious.
Good morning and happy Mother's Day. So I want to come into an agreement with you right off the bat. So Pastor Tyler, he preaches almost every week, and I preach like twice a year. So I want you to back me up every little opportunity I give you to cheer me on. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Just do it. Just cheer me on, okay? That's right. I got one supporter. Ooh, I'm feeling that. I want to honor all of the mamas. I know you guys have a hard job. Being a mommy is not an easy one. It's rewarding, but it's not really been super easy. And I have a 12 and a 13-year-old right now. So we're entering into those teenage years, and it has me feeling like I'm a parent for the first time all over again. So I want to honor you, whatever stage you're in. If you're a woman in this house today, like Brandon said, I want to give honor to you. And he missed one. Hang on. This is important. One of you was wearing a t-shirt like last week that said, stay-at-home dog mom. So if you are a stay-at-home dog mom, I'm going to honor you today too, okay? We're going to throw you in there. Let's give it up for the mamas. I have a little video to show you. Now, this is what life kind of looks like when you might be having someone over. Maybe the mamas can relate to this.
We gotta clean the house now, people! I want this place looking like Disney on Ice in 1 minute. Terry, if you haven't made your bed, throw it away. It's too late to make it now. Company is coming. Get rid of the couches. We can't let people know we sat. The chairs need to be pushed in. There cannot be any sign of living in this house. We need more bird feeders. I need a bird feeder at every window. We can't have any clothes. Everybody take off your clothes. This is a dish towel. We need a hand towel. What are we, barbarians? But it's too late. Oh! We have to go into the witness protection program, folks. Okay, get over the rescue again. Where's my family? Oh, the middle chair in the middle spot. You can tell because the grain is here down the middle. This grain is all Willy Wonka. It cannot be in the middle. Oh my God. I don't care if we have to throw everything out. I want this place looking like a new Mediterranean fusion restaurant by noon. Ah!
That's right. That's how we feel sometimes. That's a pretty accurate portrayal. Geez, moms, we have to laugh at ourselves a little bit because they're laughing at us. We all know what it's like to have a bad day or an intense day or a very dramatic day as we witnessed there. But I want to talk to you a little bit today about when it doesn't feel like it's just a bad day, but it feels like your problems are one that nobody's joking about and nobody's making a cute video about your life and what you're facing. And this is going to go nicely in our sermon series, Adulting, where today's question is my life ever going to get better? And maybe you feel like that about your life right now, that it's a really dark season or a dark chapter, and you're not sure if it's going to get better or if this is going to if it's ever going to have an ending point. But maybe for you, your life is okay, but you feel like you're in a season of waiting on something, or there's just something unresolved that you're not quite sure when there's going to be a resolution to it. And we can feel really unsatisfied and stuck in these seasons, but God gives us some insight and some help for these seasons of our life. So we're going to turn to Psalms 88, and we're going to start out. Okay, you know how somebody says, I've got good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first? So that's what I have, two Psalms. One's good news and one's kind of bad news. So which one do you want to hear first? All right, we're going with the one that's a little bit downer first. Psalms 88. Lord, you are the God who saves me. Day and night I cry out to you. And that's the last statement of faith we're going to hear in the whole chapter. I'm overwhelmed with troubles. My life draws near to death. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I am like one without strength. I am set apart with the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and who are cut off from your care. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depth. Your wrath lies heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me with all of your waves. You have taken from me my closest friends and have made me repulsive to them. I am confined and I cannot escape. My eyes are dim with grief. I call to you, Lord, every day. I spread out my hands to you and say, why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? From my youth I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors and I am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long they surround me like a flood, and they have completely engulfed me. You have taken my friends and neighbors, and darkness is my closest friend. The end. And all God's people say, what the heck? How is that in the Bible? And I feel like if I went to church, you were supposed to tell me something better than that at the end of the chapter. And somehow we think that's how our Christian lives will be, is that there's a season and then something really happy, right? And that can't be the last verse. But sometimes our lives feel just like that. And we don't know what the exact condition that brought about this in the writer's life, but we know a few things about it by looking at this psalm. He has been personally betrayed because he says, my friend and my neighbor has deserted me, and I've become repulsive to my closest friends. So it's not just that they've kind of quit talking to you and called you, but they think you're gross. We've gone beyond bad. And maybe you're experiencing that. Maybe your spouse has turned their back on you. Maybe you were betrayed at work and it cost you something. Maybe you've been backstabbed by a best friend and it's left you reeling. Trouble with your parents or your in-laws. Or maybe it's not so much trouble, but it's neglect. Your kids don't call. Or maybe your spouse is cold and sexually indifferent to you. And then we see also that he's in chronic pain because he says, from my youth I have suffered. It's been an ongoing suffering process that I've dealt with since my youth. And I really don't see an ending point to this. So maybe you're dealing with that, an illness that's dragging on and on. And he says, I'm in the darkest depths. And darkness, when you feel that kind of darkness, it just settles in and sits on you, and it's like a depression that's blinding, and you can't find solutions. You're blinded to everything that could maybe make the situation better. And then in 8, he says, I'm confined and I cannot escape. And sometimes that is how adulting feels, that no one is coming in to fix your problems and you're just stuck in it. And some of you have had thoughts like that even this week. I don't know where to start, God. I've given up on praying for the situation. Maybe it's way too far gone. Maybe she's remarried or he's remarried. Maybe they're dead or my body has permanent damage now. My reputation, maybe it's been hopelessly destroyed and I can't come back from it. And then sometimes the worst part is loneliness. When you feel like you've walked through a dark situation and nobody understands, that you're so lonely. And every mom in this room has felt that kind of loneliness. This guy feels like it's not getting better and not even God understands him. He thinks God is against him. He says, Lord, you did this. Now you're pointing your finger at God saying, I don't know, I didn't do this. I know something happened. God, you did it. I have prayed and prayed and prayed in situations and felt like my prayers weren't working, nothing was happening, and I was just going to quit praying. Has anybody been in a season like that where you just said, whatever I'm doing is not working, I'm going to just stop? And that is where this writer is. He has given up on the idea that things are getting better. He's resolved himself that it is not. It's not going to get better. But then just around the corner, here's the good news. Psalms 89 opens. And it says, I will sing of the steadfast love of the Lord forever. With my mouth, I will make known your faithfulness to all generations. You are entirely faithful, O Lord. You rule the oceans. You subdue the storm-tossed waves. You crushed the mighty sea monster. You scattered your enemies with your mighty arm, and everything in the world is yours. You created it all. I will steady him with my hand. With my powerful arm, I will make him strong. The enemy will not outwit him. The wicked shall not humble him. I will crush his foes before him and strike down those who hate him. I will extend his rule over the sea, his dominion over the rivers. He will call out to me, you are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. No, I will not break my covenant with you. I will not take back a single word I have said. And how are these two Psalms placed side by side in the Bible? That's what I want to know. In the editing room, who thought it was a good idea to put these two together? They seem bipolar. And sometimes our lives feel like that. We can be in the darkest of despair one day, and the next day we're like, oh, I think it's okay. I think I'm going to make it. And then the next week we're back to that low spot. We know that this is a realistic picture of our life. And I want to encourage you, the God that you serve, he gets real life. He understands it. And that's why I love the book of Psalms. And if you are starting to read your Bible, that's a great one to jump into because it's real life. It's a real picture. It's easy to read most of the time. This is a Rubik's Cube. Impossible little suckers. And people call this a game. This is not a game, people. This is frustration. Hours of frustration. I've never even really tried that hard because after messing with it a little bit, I'm just like, hand it back and say, here, you do it. We were talking about the Rubik's Cube this week, and they were helping me walk through this illustration, and Janessa, one of our graphic designers, she said, you know what, when I was little, I had one of these, and I messed with it for so long. I tried to get this thing right for months. And she said, at the end, I got like 4 or 5 that would not match. And it drove me crazy. And she said, so finally, I just peeled off the little stickers and just put them on where it made sense and forced it to match. I'd spoken like a graphic designer right there. They think they can blur away all the little lines, right? But you know what? She did better than me at it. And sometimes that's how we feel. We just want to peel the stickers off and pretend that everything is working out okay, that it's all matching up, and that somehow it is in our control. And the fact that the Bible even has parts in it like this, it shows you that you don't have to have your cubes all matching. That you can be real with God. And that his steadfast love for you isn't dependent on how nicely your Rubik's Cube matches up. Psalms 89 assures us that God's steadfast love for us rules over everything in our life. He rules the raging sea, it says. And that can represent life's most chaotic things. The cancer cell, the unexpected job loss, the random accident, whatever took you by surprise, God said he's ruling over the raging sea in your life. And then he says he is in control of the sea monster. And that can be our most sinister enemy. Whether it's a boss that's a terrorist to you, not mine. I've got a great boss. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? Whatever, if someone has it in for you, God's in control of that too. Yes. Nothing falls outside of God's control. His steadfast love is working for you for the good purposes he has for your life. He will not break his covenant. He will not take back a single word he has spoken over your life. But we know that God's unwavering love for us isn't always clear, and sometimes we don't feel it. Because the psalmist says in Psalms 89, he says, "Oh Lord, how long will this go on? And will you hide yourself forever?" Because we have a tendency to judge how God feels about us by our circumstances. So we look around and we say, if everything's good in my life, that must mean God is happy with me and I'm doing okay. But if I have trouble, it means that God's not happy with me. And he's not pleased, and I need to be doing something different. And sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes you get a new job when you just lost one, and it's better and it pays more money. And sometimes when your boyfriend dumps you, you get a fiance right away. That's amazing. But sometimes there's a period of time where it doesn't make sense and you don't understand and you don't know why. And we cry out in bewilderment and frustration and say, how long will this season be, God? So we begin to understand and see why those verses are there for us. Because the story of what God is doing in your life ends in total praise. All Psalms 88 prayed long enough is turning into praise in our life. And you might not ever be able to connect the dots and answer the whys of why it happened to you and why you're experiencing it. But it is working for your good and it's ending in praise. Paul explains this and he compares it to the experience of a mother after giving birth. Pain that is swallowed up in joy. Where we totally forget the process that it took to bring that baby here. Until we get around a group of moms and then we share our labor stories. Tyler's favorite, he says. And then we remember some of that. But Paul says there's coming a time when the pain on this earth is going to seem strangely insignificant. Like it weirdly did not even matter. So think with me. If you can already see the purpose for some of the pain in your life, don't you think there's coming a day with enough distance and perspective that we're going to be able to understand all of the pain in our life? You know, like the job that you lost woke you up out of the life of materialism. The divorce taught you to depend on God. There's going to be a day when we understand some of that. Right in the middle of Psalms 89, there's a passage about Jesus. And it's talking about how what he did on the cross is kind of what puts our life back together again. So I want you to be thinking about this Rubik's Cube while I read this passage. And actually, I have found someone who can solve the Rubik's Cube. Common Isaiah. He's a 7th grader. Pleasant View Middle School. Now, this is an ordinary Rubik's Cube. He couldn't find his. His little brothers lost his. So we bought one a couple days ago. He's been practicing with it, but this is not rigged. He's exceptional in a lot of ways, but he's an average 7th grader, okay? And he can do the Rubik's Cube. So as I read about Jesus, he's going to solve this. He's not Jesus, okay? And he can't solve your problems, so don't come find him. But here you go, Common, help me out. But now you have cast off and rejected your anointed. This is the prophecy about Jesus. You are full of wrath against him. You have renounced the covenant with him. You have defiled his crown in the dust. You have breached all his walls. All who passed by plundered him, and he has become the scorn of his neighbors. You have cut short the days of his youth, and you have covered him in shame. So that verse 38 says you rejected him, and yes, God allowed his wrath to be poured out on his son Jesus. And verse 40 says you breached his walls. And yes, a spear was driven through the walls of his heart. Blood and water flowed out. And verse 41 says, all who passed by plundered him. And that day the soldiers divided up his garments. And verse 45 says, he was covered with shame. They spit on him. They defiled him. They put a crown of thorns on him, and they mocked him, saying, give it up for Common. Just like that. It's solved. And I look at it now and it looks so easy. And he did it. He wasn't even sweating. He made it all okay. And that's like what Jesus does for us. And that passage I just read, you can summarize that in 4 words. Jesus took my place. Jesus just handed me, he paid the price for my messy life. And he says, there's no condemnation left for you. There's no wrath left for you. He traded me his perfection for my mess. So when you feel abandoned and forsaken and rejected, I'm here to tell you today you're wrong. You can feel one way and it might not be true. Because you are not forsaken, you are not abandoned, and you are rejected. The price has already been paid for you. All suffering that I'm facing now isn't God's rejection on my life, but it is God's glorious salvation process working through me. And I know I'm not making light of your pain because I have heard your stories. I have cried with you and I have felt helpless with you. And I've walked through my own discouraging situations. And I love how David says it in Psalms 3. He talks about his problem, but this time he adds a but. He says, but, oh Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me. You're my glory and the lifter of my head. He is a shield about you this morning, and not just in front of you, but all the way around you. God is protecting you, and he is with you in the middle of your pain. And then he said, he's my glory You, O Lord, are my glory. So notice the Bible doesn't say he's giving you glory. And sometimes that's what we want. We want a glorious job and a glorious marriage and a glorious outcome. But he says, I am your glory. Christ in us, Paul says, is the hope of glory. So on the outside, I might look like a wreck, like I've been left behind or I'm waiting. But God's glory is way bigger than my circumstances. And I don't care if you can see it or if you believe it. And some days it's hard for me to understand that too. But I just know that my God is bigger than this. And he is the lifter of my head. He's like a mother, the best kind of mother that looks at her child that's hurt and upset and gathers them up and says, don't be afraid. You've got this. We're going to work this out together, baby. I've said that to my kids. It's going to be okay. We don't serve a distant God that promises just it's going to be okay one day. But he has united himself to your pain. He says, I'm not leaving you. I'm not going to leave your side. And I'm going to make it all right. His presence assures us of his good plan for us. And when I cannot grasp the why behind what I'm going through, when I can't understand my pain, I cling to his presence. My default is the presence of God. When I'm upset, I turn to God. I turn on the Jesus music. When Tyler's grouchy, I turn it up louder. When the kids are on my last nerve, I've been known to pull out the Bible and hand it to them and say, read it. Keep reading. Out loud. Just keep reading. They're like, how much, Mom? I don't know. A few chapters in and we'll decide when it's time to quit. It doesn't make you weak to turn to Jesus. It makes you smart. Get out your freedom declarations and declare it over your life if you've been through freedom. If not, sign up next time. If I thought I could fix my issues, I would. But I know God who's bigger than all of my problems. So don't stop believing and praying for the breakthrough, because it is right to do that. I know that my failure isn't fatal. And that even if I have a total lack of movement in my life, God does not need me to be moving. He's the God that says you can be still and know that I am God. No action on my part, no movement happening, and he still can be God. Can somebody shout amen? And some people will make you feel like suffering has no place in your life. And others act like it's wrong for you to pray that it would end. And both of those people are wrong. I'm telling you, put your blinders on. It helps when we don't pay attention and give place to that kind of unhelpful nonsense. Even if you can't whisper a praise out, just stand still, and that's enough for God. Sometimes a story can say it better than 1,000 sermons, and so I'm going to share with you a story this morning as I close. And this is not from someone in this room, but it could be. There's 1,000 stories like this, and this represents the story of 1,000 women. She says, if you had asked me what I was thankful for before September, I would have said that I'm thankful for my family, my home, my job, for God, for a husband who loves me and cares for me, for our 4 children. But in October, my Christian husband, completely out of the blue, left me and our children for someone else who left her husband as well. This other family were friends of ours. We'd vacationed with them on 3 separate occasions. I thought they were our close friends. She goes on to talk about the disputes with her husband and the devastation it brought to her kids. My husband's still gone a year later. He has told me that they're going to be part of our kids' lives, and I just need to get used to that and not hate her. My kids are dealing with this impact. They're depressed, they're angry, they're confused. My oldest is questioning his faith and rebelling against authority and lashing out. My house is for sale. I don't know where we're going to move. But in the midst of this, I've come to know God on a different level. And I see him working in a way I'd only heard about. Because before, I kind of thought of God as comforting me and hugging me. And now I just feel like my picture of God is me collapsed and Jesus carrying me. And that's awesome. And at the end of this, I see glimpses of what God's doing and how our lives will be changed. I'm excited to see who I get to be at the end of this. So today, I want you to know that it's okay to be in a season that looks like a Psalms 88. You can be honest with God. I know that you're in a fiery trial. The Bible says the enemy does go about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. But I want to tell you today, in regards to you, he may not. He can't devour you. He said, this far and no more. This failure for you is not fatal. You can be honest with God. You're not going to scare him away. He welcomes your doubts and your tears and even your finger pointing. But if I want to leave one thing with you today, I want to release you from connecting the dots in your life and trying to figure out why and try to figuring out the answer to what has no answer. Because God has a plan, especially for you today. And for the women who feel marginalized, taken advantage of, deceived, rejected. I want to tell you collectively in this room, we believe in you. And we believe in a really, really big God. Jesus. So if you know someone in this kind of season, sit with them and don't preach too soon. Can we pray together? First, I pray for those who haven't yet put their trust in you. I pray that they would run to you and trade in their messed up lives for your glory. And I pray for those who are experiencing darkness in a difficult season. I pray that today they would feel the assurance of your love. And that they would know that your full attention is on them. However long the waiting and the suffering, you are a bigger God. And we trust you.